Good evening and welcome to the February 18th, 2019 edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. God, do we have a lot to talk about. So, before we get started, let's do a little housekeeping for those of you who don't come here regularly. The live streams happen every Monday night at 8, Friday night at 8:30. You can follow the work over at tomluongo.me. You can also follow me on Twitter when I remember to post, TFL1728, and you can also support my work over at Patreon/Gold, Goats, and Guns. All the links are in the description to the video below, so, you know, make it easy. All right, let's get started. So this morning I threw up a video on Amazon and about the crowing of the American left vis-a-vis blocking or getting Amazon to not put their headquarters, the new headquarters, in New York. And I went over some very basic economics and some very basic reputations of the socialists in the audience. And I use the word socialist. Remember, when I use the word socialist, I mean collectivist. I know exactly what I'm talking about at a very high level. Now, I'm not being arrogant. I'm just for the new people. I'm not some idiot. Period. When it comes to socialism, you can create all kinds of euphemisms you want for, well, it's democratic socialism, or it's stakeholder capitalism, or it's communism, or it's thisism, or it's that. At the end of the day, it's all collectivism. It's all you believe that the state has the right to adjudicate all property, and individuals don't, and then the community comes before the individual. Period. You're a collectivist. Get over it. And so socialism is just really the best catch-all phrase for that. And to remind people that it's not just the kinder, gentler version of communism, because it's not. It's the dumber version of communism, because it purports to be something that it isn't. So the Amazon deal blew up. The more I look into this, the more I'm like, I can't believe that this thing blew up at all, because it was really a sweetheart deal for both sides. The tax credits, supposedly $150 million a year, $1.5 billion in tax credits, were mostly a 3-year tax holiday that Amazon probably wasn't going to pay any taxes anyway. They were worth up to $1.5 billion. But really, it was just to help Amazon get through the entire process of moving people into New York City, which is not an insignificant logistical task, and get the building built and all the other things that go along with it. So, you know, while they weren't generating any revenue, they weren't going to be paying any taxes, because it's going to take 3 years for this to actually start generating any kind of profit for them. And so there's no reason why they should be paying taxes during that time, especially when they're generating revenue for the city of New York through secondary and tertiary processes. But, you know, we don't actually want to discuss, you know, rational behavior on the part of in our politics anymore, because it's not about rationality. It's about whatever you can fucking demagogue. Again, for those of you in the audience, I use them. I use this language in a sentence, and I'm not afraid of it. Matter of fact, I'm really good at it. So, good evening, and everybody who showed up so far. Lovely to have you all here. Let's continue. So, these aren't this isn't like the city of New York handed the world's biggest company a $1.5 billion check. But that's the way this was demagogued. It wasn't about anything other than not getting revenue you weren't going to get in the first place. Because that's the truth of the matter. And so Scott Colvin reminds me, the left, jobs from private companies are bad. Jobs from government is good. I know. Like, they don't understand that government doesn't have anything they didn't steal from the small and medium business owners in the first place. As it's important to remember that actually Amazon would help all of the small and medium businesses in New York City that they weren't in direct competition with. So like the supermarkets, yeah, they're in trouble. The showroom retailers, yeah, they're in trouble. Any more than they already are. But everybody else ultimately is going to see a net benefit from this. They're going to see greater ground traffic. They're going to see more tourists in New York. They're going to see more business being done in New York. They're going to see all of this stuff. It's, you know, we're talking $3.5 billion a year in payroll. Do the math. The payroll taxes alone between city and state taxes are going to be like something like 20% of $3.5 billion a year. And these people threw it away. So the real question is, what actually happened? I don't have a good answer for you, but I can conjecture. They're going to blame it all on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Why? Because they want her gone. New York is as corrupt politician. There's a corrupt political landscape as one could imagine. And they don't want them. They don't want her. They're going to figure a way to kneecap her between now and 2020. She gets way more attention than she should. She's at the end of the day just a freshman congresswoman. Congress her or whatever the hell she is. I'm not sure. I don't want to. I wouldn't presume to misgender her or anything. I wouldn't want to be thought of as a reactionary. But the reality is you have to remember that New York is corrupt to the gills between the unions and the mob and everything else. New York, you can't do any business at all in New York without greasing some palms. And I always had a real worry, actually. To me, it never seemed like New York would be a good fit for Amazon in the first place. I was talking to my friend of mine about this this afternoon, and we were just like, I never really thought New York was a good fit for them anyway. Because, and I'm like, I don't. It's funny. I'm like, the place is corrupt. The costs are high. The government is beyond. They define corruption. They define ineffectual, useless, annoying, Byzantine red tape. It's New York. It's awful. My dad was NYPD. My whole family group, has worked and lived and worked in New York. Who's member of who worked in the transit department? Who ran? I know so much of this stuff from like the blue collar level, and and never forget that as Italian immigrants, blue collar jobs that were government jobs were good because we didn't have it. Because you went from not having anything to having a stable thing, and we all had this my family had a very Depression era mindset. I'm the youngest of Depression era kids. So my dad was born in 28, my mom was born in 23. So they're silent era children born right in the height and grew up during the Depression. I was the youngest of their four. So my sisters are baby boomers. And believe me, they're baby boomers. And so it's a very weird thing, but going to family reunions and family get-togethers, holidays and whatnot, I'd listen to the corruption from the transit department to the police department to the fire department to this one to that one, like all of this stuff, and who ran a florist shop in Manhattan, but had to deal with all of the basic everyday street level corruption that existed in New York. It's crazy. So, I never thought Amazon was a good choice it was a good fit for New York in the first place. And then, so you have to ask yourself, why did this deal actually fall through? And I don't think this deal blew up because of Ocasio-Cortez and her little clique of people putting pressure on Amazon and making demands. I think de Blasio pushed too far for too much the unions and whoever else came in saying we want our cut, and 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 eventually Bezos just said, no, fuck you, I'm done. It doesn't work that way. That's not who we are. We don't need you. There's 50 other cities that would love our business. Why don't you go shit in your hat? And I'm convinced that it had to be something like that, and then they get to blame it on Ocasio-Cortez so they can make it easier for her to and she's just make it easier for them to get rid of her, and she's just dumb enough to take credit for it all because she's like power. I have power. So they all dipped there. It has nothing to do with even Democrats. It's just this is the way everywhere. But it's worse under shit for brains like de Blasio. Nothing was better than watching those retards in both him and Cuomo. Both as an Italian, they're both race traitors as far as I'm concerned. But watching the two of them like whine and virtue signal in public was hilarious. Actually, I was like, I was laughing. I'm like, you jackass! You stepped in it so fucking bad. You had everything imaginable. You negotiated a good deal, and then what the fuck did you do? You pushed too hard, and they walked away. And now you're going to virtue signal that it was because they didn't want to pay too much to deal with your diversity training. Go fuck yourself. Holy shit, dude. Like de Blasio is literally living in like Lululand. I mean, he's wow. So wow. I'm so glad I don't live there. Yeah, Cube Dog. She's young and dumb enough just to open her mouth consistently enough to hide the real criminality underneath. Exactly. New York is a cesspit. I mean, I remember, I keep telling you this. This is what the Democrats have been hanging their hat on for Russiagate and Donald Trump. They've been hoping that something would come out that they could hang on Trump, some petty level corruption for building a building in New York, because, you have to pay contractors under the table, and you've got to... you can't get a building built in New York without envelopes of cash going into guys' hands. It's just not possible. It's just the way business works there. And if you don't like it, then don't go there. So, it's just funny. Okay. So, and they were really hoping that they could then, use that to peg the outrage meter and hopefully get rid of Trump. Like, at the rate that Trump is fucking up on his own, the rate that Trump is fucking up everything on his own, he doesn't need to be removed from office to do the Democrats' handiwork. They're even more inept than he is. They're just in we will oppose Trump in every way, even when Trump is like losing, even when he's making mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. And they keep fueling his reelection because there's enough people in this country, and I think wrongly, who will follow him to the ends of the earth simply because the Democrats oppose everything he tries to do. And they think he's some kind of freaking martyr, and it's insane. It's really funny watching this play out. And I've become that, I don't know, I wouldn't say black-pilled about it, but it's just the way it is. So... it's really kind of sad, actually. I mean, that the Democrats are so tactically and strategically weak that they can't even see that Trump is useless. It's not really Trump in office. It's Jeb in disguise. Yeah, no, it's George W. Bush without the alcohol. Stoyanovich, New York and California are their own separate worlds, separate from reality. Unfortunately, the SALT cap will now spread them amongst the red states, sadly, SALT being state and local taxes. Maybe. Or the reasonable people will all leave, and the rest of them will just stay in New York and California in their little socialist paradise. So what I'm saying is 2020 is going to be the cleanest shirt in the landfill type of deal. No, I'm saying that 2020 isn't going to be respected by either side. It's going to be the biggest shit show you ever saw. I'm with Martin Armstrong on this. I don't see a future for the United States. I don't. I just don't. Yeah, James, I hear you that he's not really George Bush because he would have bombed Iran by now. I don't know about that. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. So, let's see. So, that was my Amazon talk. Now let's talk about Munich. And I've been writing a lot about this. I just submitted an article into Strategic Culture. I wrote something for the blog yesterday about Munich. I was on with Sputnik Radio this morning, as a matter of fact. And the mothership over in Moscow, which is always fun when I get to do that one, which is not often. And it's funny, the last time I was on Sputnik Radio, I really kind of shat the bed. I didn't think it was a particularly good interview. And Olga, the producer who contacts me on Twitter behind the scenes, I said, well, Olga, thank you for the invite, as always. I don't think I did a particularly good job. Probably guys won't have me back on again. So it was a really weird interview. I didn't even remember what it was about, but I got blindsided by stuff I couldn't answer. And I just had to sit there and go, well, I can't really answer that. And I can't really answer that either. And it was like kind of like 7 to 8 minutes worth of very uncomfortable talk with the very nice, but sharp as shit Russian radio host, and I don't remember her name, but God, she's sharp, and it's a rare thing that I'm not, in full command of my material, and so for this one, that was not going to happen again. Like Sputnik called again, I'm going to be like on top of this. It's all day yesterday, researching doing the work for the article yesterday to get myself like together. Do I have a thesis about what's going on with all these different conferences that happened in Warsaw, Munich, Sochi, and the rest? I'm like, and then I get in there this morning, and it's the English guy, Jason, and it was the easiest. We just talked about Merkel, and it was like the easiest 15-minute interview I ever did. I'm like, oh my God. I'm not gonna complain. It was a really good, it was easy. So, I was happy about that, actually. So when I'll post it up on the blog once they send me a link to it. But let's talk about Munich real quick, and then I'm going to get to some of your comments, because you guys are commenting about all the stuff I want to talk about in relation to Munich. So Tulsi Gabbard was periscoping today. That's good for her. She should do more of that. She wants to win. She should do more of that. Yeah, they are. I mean, Sputnik Moscow is usually a really good interview. I've done the mothership now 4 or 5 times, and every time I've been able to handle it well, but except for that one time, and I was like, it was a really weird interview, because it didn't quite dovetail with what they had said they wanted me to talk about, and so I was a little off. And then she went off in a direction that she wanted me to give an answer to, that I'm like, that is not my area of expertise at all. And as opposed to trying to fake it to make it, which I refuse to do, I just said, look, I can't answer that question. I wish I could. And maybe they appreciated the fact that I was just willing to say, no, I'm just not an expert in that. Maybe, I don't know. But in my mind, I get those opportunities rarely. In my mind, I have to kill him every time. Speaking of which, tomorrow I will be on the Ron Paul Liberty Report at noon with one of my absolute heroes in the world, Ron Paul. I should really just dedicate the rest of the live stream tonight talking about Ron Paul. But apparently one of my subscribers over Gold, Goats, and Guns is also works at the Ron Paul Institute, and we chatted behind the scenes, and they initiated the contact to have me on tomorrow. So it's going to be a radio interview. Don't be shocked. I won't be wearing the hat. Like, that's a professional interview. I'm going to wear a tie. I'm not fucking around here. So I'm going to meet Ron Paul. I'm going to be dressed well, or at least reasonably well. So No, this is just really cool. I'm looking forward to it. I've never met Ron Paul. I had an opportunity to meet Ron Paul at the New Orleans Investor Conference a few years ago, but I think I've told this story before. But he's literally like walking through the hotel in New Orleans at the New Orleans Hilton, and I was leaving a thing, and I had to meet somebody for lunch, and I had to pee like you would not believe, and I was behind schedule, and I could not stop, and I literally had no opportunity to stop to talk to Dr. Paul and even shake his hand. And then I didn't see him for the rest of the conference, and it was like really annoying. So yeah, you guys are funny. So you read that Christine Lagarde was enamored with Ivanka Trump. Well, that's not good, actually. Cube dog. So let's talk about so Stoyanovich, Munich, Germany won. France was slapped down. Poland was isolated and shunned, self-inflicted. And Brexit opens all kinds of doors. I agree. So here's the gig. I thought the Munich conference, Merkel was really the key to the Munich conference. She gave a speech that got quite the response, and it was all about her standing up to Trump on all the major issues: the INF withdrawal, the JCPOA, Nord Stream 2, NATO funding, all of that stuff. And interestingly, as I was prepping this morning for the interview, I saw a great comment from a German commenter on Sputnik who said, you guys do realize, right, that when Trump says he wants the Germans to spend, 3% of GDP on defense, that would be 20% of the German government's budget. So he wants the German government to spend $1 in $5 on defense. We're not going to do that. And it was at that moment that I realized when he put the numbers like that, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I went and checked real quick. I'm like, okay, even if those numbers are a little off, even if it's $1 in $6, it's still way too freaking much money. And the reason why that's big is because, think about it. It's all about everything Trump is doing in Europe is all about trying to make energy for them more expensive, to make our energy that's expensive to produce over here compatible with the rest of the world. With them, raise the price, raise their energy options, the price of their energy options up to make ours look just as attractive, and to make their economies less efficient. Thereby, we win. Because if we can't compete honestly, well then, Trump, the mafia don, is going to make him. We're not going to. Yeah, he's willing to fight on unfair terms, and that's what he's doing. That's why Nord Stream 2, that's why the JCPOA, because remember, when the Iran nuclear deal was signed, it was signed in July of 2015. Now, at that point, everybody expected the Syrian government to fall by October. So when Putin moved in to Syria, it was literally at the last possible moment he could wait. He couldn't wait any longer, right? Because the Assad government could have easily had fallen in the next 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. We tend to forget this now. So the milieu under which the JCPOA was negotiated was that who gives a shit if we give Iran back all of their money that we froze and we stole from them? Who cares if we open up their business prospects? They're going to be our satraps because we're going to be able to crush them, because Syria will be a mess, balkanized, hotbed of terrorism for the next 50 years. And we can then start sending all of our minions across Iraq and Kurdistan and the rest of it to blow up Turkey, the rest of Syria and northern Iran, and blow the whole region wide open. And so, who cares? We'll push for regime change the next year in Iran. And that was the plan. And the Russians stopped that. And that's why the unrelenting aggression towards Russia, period. And I don't think Trump quite understood this when he took office, that this was policy. He understood what was going to happen with Israel. He knew the Iran nuclear deal was terrible, but it was only terrible because his Israeli firsters in his family and around him thought it was terrible, but he didn't quite understand what the fucking plan was. Now he understands the plan, and if he wants to stay alive, and he wants his family to stay alive, and he wants his business to stay alive, well, then he's going to go along with the fucking plan, regardless of anything else. And to be honest with you, I don't think that Trump is, I don't think he's being dragged into this or anything, okay? So, that's the situation. Because remember, the minute that happened, the minute that thing was signed, Total was in there, the French state oil company, Eni was in there, the Italians, the Germans were in there, everybody was in there looking for deals, oil and gas deals with Iran. Because the Europeans needed to secure their energy future. Now remember as well, the European Union is looking at, and the globalists are looking at destroying the United States from within and transferring all the power to Europe and turning Europe into the global empire, the seat of the global empire, right? And so Germany's not above courting the Russians from Nord Stream via Nord Stream 2, forcing them to cancel South Stream in order to get Nord Stream, and then also stopping the gas transit across, and then trying to control the gas transit across Ukraine by helping the Americans foment a coup in Ukraine. And Germany's hands are all dirty in this shit. Don't, and they're willing to play both sides against the middle to get everything that they want, because they were trying to position themselves as especially under Merkel, were trying to position themselves as the potential global hegemon centered in Brussels. Well, the EU, but really with Berlin backing them. And so you have that scenario, similar to how Erdogan has been playing everybody against each other for him to get everything he wants in Turkey. It's very similar. Merkel and Erdogan are cut from the same cloth. So it's it's interesting to see how this plays out in Germany, and that's why Merkel's been said what she said yesterday. It's why she's been doing the things she's doing. It's why she's, for example, comes out this morning and says, "Well, I'm fully behind keeping up the Russian sanctions, and I'm fully behind importing, green lighting LNG terminals, import terminals, and even." Allowing Exxon and Uniper to cut a deal, right? So all these things are happening at the same time, because on the one hand, she's pissing off Trump, and on the other hand, she's giving him everything he wants, right? That's the way she's doing this. This is the way she's playing this at this point. It's really funny how she's it's really funny how she's trying to play this to set Germany up for the future, and she has to, because Germany is stuck in the middle always. Germany's stuck between the two major powers, trying to figure out who's going to get wrest control of Germany. And Germany's trying to figure out an independent path. Because the natural alliance here is between Russia and Germany, and everybody knows it. And the United States and the British and the French have been working overtime for the last 200 years to keep the Russians and the Germans from getting together. Okay? This is nothing new. Okay? Nord Stream 2 represents one of those really awful moments when you really stop to think about what Nord Stream 2 represents. It absolutely represents a complete and utter failure of U.S. foreign policy. Because once that pipeline goes through, it will give Russia all the leverage in the world in Ukraine. Ukraine gas transit contract runs out at the end of this year. So, pipelines like Nord Stream and Turk Stream, Nord Stream 2, Turk Stream, potentially Nord Stream 3, and a new gas transit deal across Ukraine, all of those things tie Russia and Germany and the EU together in a way that the United States can't keep control over, no matter how much they try to suppress all of it through NATO. I mean, I was reading some stuff about, and I was thinking about what's going on with Serbia. Now, I don't know a lot about Serbia, but I can tell you this. I don't, and I know that there are some here who do, and I know there's some people that are subscribers and whatnot have tried to educate me about Serbia, and I appreciate all your efforts, but it's just something that hasn't been on my radar. But the more I look at what's happening, and I realize why Serbia is important, and it is truly because it is kind of the gateway between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And the first spur of the Turk Stream pipeline is going to go across Serbia into Hungary. And there's also a new rail line coming from the Greek port of Piraeus up to Hungary as well, up to Budapest, which will then tie in, which will help to then tie into the rest of Obor and all that eventually. Good evening, Mark Bogosian. How are you? So yeah, Bismarck called this Middle Europa. You're absolutely right. So understand that when Putin went to Serbia last month or earlier this month and cut deals immediately, it's all about breaking down the barriers to a German-Russian hookup in the long run. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point that that's what's happening, and that's what's going to happen. And I've been thinking I've been saying for a while that it was always going to work out this way, because again, it's impossible for a country. Let's put it this way: in the West, there's nobody left to rotate the capital into. So we went from, and I guess let's just look. We went from the British to us. Now, who do we go back to? Where does it go from there? We've subjugated South America. There's no possibility for the capital to go there. We've subjugated Africa. There's no possibility for going there. It's not going to come to Europe because we've been subsidizing the growth of a European totalitarian socialist state, transnational totalitarian socialist state that is now on its last legs politically and economically. It's going to be the first domino to fall. So where does the global capital center going to go after this? China. And who's going to see the secondary capital inflows? Russia. And that's why when the Russians, started to move their business away from the West after South Stream was canceled, that's why all of this is happening. This is all part of the subtext of what was going on in Munich this weekend. And so Germany's not going to be the ruler of the world, no matter how much the Soroses and the Steyrs and the Rothschilds and the and the British royal family and the Vatican and everything, they all want it. It's not going to happen. And the Jews, right? For those 2 or 3 alt-righters in the audience. Yes. So, and the New York banks and all those guys, it's not going to happen. It's all going to move to China. Because the political situation here is not stable. The institutional order here is built on a foundation of sand and debt. So, yeah, Serbia starts their construction of their leg of the Turk Stream pipeline next month. They're already started building the friggin' railroad. These are very important things. Serbia is geologically stable compared to the rest of the Balkans and basically not blocked by mountains. Thank you, Stojanovic. This is the kind of thing I haven't just looked at the map. And it's a terrible thing that I say that I admit that I haven't done so, but that's the kind of thing, and that makes perfect sense then. And it's also why Hungary is so important, and it's also why the rest, it's all, it all makes sense then. So understand that Munich was really important from this perspective for Merkel to stand up and basically tell the United States to go scratch and go pound sand. And there's not much we can do about it at this point. And the mental midgets that run our foreign policy, what are they going to do? You're going to sanction Siemens for doing business doing their regular business? Really? You think you're going to get away with sanctioning Siemens and Volkswagen? I mean, Trump's insane if he thinks he can actually pull this off. If he thinks he can just mafia don the whole world and, you know, threaten to break everybody's legs and think that there's not going to be consequences in the long run, like, who's he fucking kidding? I mean, and if that's the kind of mentality he has for this, then he's not fit to be president, to be honest with you. He's not. If all of this is just, okay, well, we're gonna make the big ask as big as possible, and then we're gonna hope that, you know, they don't see, you know, they don't see all the angles, and we can get something out of it that more than what we have. Well, then that's fine. If he's just, you know, playing the big friggin' crazy Ivan game, well, that's fine. But I don't know, man. I'm having a hard time. I really am. Serbia is our ethnic brethren to Russians and will never, ever join NATO. Yes, that will drive them insane. Yeah. Bolton will not bomb Berlin. That's not going to happen. John Bolton wants to bomb Iran. So, yeah, it's a fascinating, you know, set of situations and a set of things that are happening at this point. All right, let me get back to some of your questions from earlier. So let's talk about. So Scott Colvin asked me a long time ago. You see the U.S. fracturing? If so, then can we only save a portion of it? Maybe. I definitely see the U.S. fracturing. Even Martin Armstrong was even talking about this morning. He says 4 countries. I don't know. I can see 7. But I also drew that map up a long time ago. There's definitely at least 4 regions that make sense. Obviously the left coast, obviously the Northeast, the Gulf Coast. I just don't see the middle of the country all being one, you know, being united. I think there's probably a couple of different iterations of that. I can easily see some of the big square states just getting together and going, yeah, we're landlocked. We're going to be Hungary, but, you know, fuck it. You know, whatever. We're not going to go along with, you know, Texas or having Texas rule us or anything. I can see weird stuff happening in there. You got to remember as well that, you know, Canada is probably politically stable as a unit, but they're going to go bankrupt. So, you know, but yeah, the United States, I just, the political divide between the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans at this point is unbreachable. It's not going to get better at the next election cycle. It's only going to get worse. No one's listening to each other. Everybody's in a heightened state of anxiety and panic all the time. And then anybody who, you know, even tries to cut through the noise, Tulsi Gabbard, for example, or Rand Paul, is immediately shouted down as a stooge of a foreign government. And so I just don't think there's a long-term solution here. And I think as the country starts to come apart at the seams economically, it's going to come apart at the seams politically. The worse things get as there's a number of things happening here. When we talk about the sovereign debt crisis in Europe, you remember that we're going to be the next domino in the chain, or at least, you know, Japan and Europe and us. And it could happen in a slightly different order, but we're going to be last in that order. Okay. Japan may break first. I just saw something in Zero Hedge today that, you know, Mrs. Watanabe may finally be tired of buying, you know, Japanese government bonds at negative yield. It only took her a generation and a half, but hey, you know, culture. So when you think about it in those terms, just because Europe's going to fall first doesn't mean we're going to be spared. No, it's going to be these big waves of capital flowing around and chasing the political unrest that's going to happen as a result of all of this. Europe starts to fracture. We're not going to be immune to that. We're not immune to it now. Because the same processes that are tearing Europe apart are tearing us apart, which is the promises of socialism or democratic socialism or Marxism can't be fulfilled. And once everybody realizes that they've paid into a pig, they've paid into the system and they're not going to get anything out of it, all hell breaks loose. When it's all been stolen, which everybody's already waking up to this fact anyway. And I mean, and to go back to the Amazon comments from earlier in today, AOC is just a symbol of people's frustration with the system fucking everybody over. And they don't have a good answer, and because they're not thinking through it, they don't have a good answer for what the fucking cause was and what the solution is. And it always works this way. And since we've been inculcated as a society in both the West and in both Europe and the United States that socialism is superior to capitalism for the last 75 fucking years, as I've said before, their long march through the institutions is going to culminate in their triumph just before the whole fucking system collapses. Because of it, and to fall apart under the weight of its own internal inconsistencies. El Vaquero, the Ukrainian coup still used the same playbook that the CIA ran in 1953 to overthrow Mossadegh. You'd think these people would be creative, but nope. I say it all the time, El Vaquero. They're very smart, but they're not very clever. They just do what works. Or they just do what if that worked before, let's try that again. And if that doesn't work, we'll keep trying it. They do the same thing in Venezuela. And they're going to try the same thing in Iran because they're not, they may be smart, but again, they're not clever. It's why they always go to nuts and sluts when they want to get rid of somebody. Because it seems to work. And that's what they do. What will happen with Salvini and the whole migrant kidnapping fluff they're trying to charge him with? Well, apparently there's a vote going on, a vote going on amongst five-star MEPs or five-star MPs today, and we'll know by tomorrow how they're going to vote as to whether or not they're going to allow the Sicilian government to go forward with their complaint about Salvini. For those of you who don't know, Vice Prime Minister and Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, the head of the League in Italy, is being charged with kidnapping for holding some migrants on a freaking merchant marine boat vessel or whatever, Navy vessel, and it's all political nonsense to try and drive a wedge between Five Star and the League. And the reason is because Five Star has been adamant as one of their main points of any politician who is under investigation should resign. And so this has been designed by the Soros and Davos crowd and Brussels to try and break up the Five Star League bromance. Now, from what I understand, I was reading on Zero Hedge earlier that the opinion polls are 85% in Salvini's favor. So I don't think anybody wants Five Star to hold Five Star to that pledge. So I don't think it goes anywhere, but you never can tell. All right, let me look through. If the London whale should have taught anybody anything, it's that our banks are tied to Europe's, and European banking drops a deuce, and ours is going to too. I agree with you, El Vaquero. Remember, central bankers are like generals. They're always fighting the last war. So they think they have themselves ring fenced against mortgage-backed securities and some of these other derivative things, but what they're not thinking of in terms of sovereign debt going bad. And that's the problem. The next one's going to be a sovereign debt crisis. It's not going to be a private debt crisis. So they're ring-fenced against private debt crisis, but they're not ring-fenced against the sovereign debt crisis, where countries just show up and say, well, we can't fucking pay, and we're not going to pay. Then what? All right. What are you guys talking about? I'm just trying to read some of the comments between... Lukashenko has been pushing for what? I'll say, Tom, what do you think about Belarus and the Russian Union that Putin and Lukashenko talked about a couple of days ago, where Lukashenko said Belarus is ready for being part of Russia? So you guys have been, you and Stoyanovich have been going back and forth on this. So Lukashenko has been pushing for this since the dissolution of the USSR. Putin has resisted. There has to be a reason, and I'm not sure why. Putin seems to push for it too, that their last meeting at Russia seems that they want to accomplish it while Putin is still in office. I don't know. I think it's going to be necessary for Belarus to shit or get off the pot. Lukashenko has tried to kind of play the Russians off the Ukrainians and Europe. He's tried to like cozy up to Europe every once in a while to get concessions from Putin, and Putin's put him in his place. I think that the best way to put their relationship is that at some point, both of them are going to have to, Lukashenko is just going to have to, you know, give it up and go, yeah, okay, you win, Vlad. And, you know, because there's no appetite for Belarus to join the EU, even though the EU would probably love it, right? But I don't see that happening. And I don't think that that's, I think that that's not realistic. And I think Lukashenko is probably at the point now where he realizes that the EU is not a partner you want to dance with, certainly after Ukraine. So I think it's something that will probably get done, as you guys were saying, before the end of Putin's next term, which is over the next 5 years. Okay, you guys are talking about Canada, it sounds like. As for Iran, by the time the Mullahs are overthrown from the power of the United States, will probably already be dissolved as a country. That's one way of looking at it. Look, Rocket Man, you're onto one of my other basic theses, so it's actually a great comment, which is the following: these guys are going. These guys, Russia, China, Iran, to a lesser extent, Turkey. And even to a lesser extent, in some ways, India, but Modi is fucking hopeless. They're playing a war of attrition. They're playing a waiting game. All they're trying to do is to not get into a war until the United States, because they know this whole thing's going to fall apart. They know it's coming. They're not stupid. So all they have to really do is just wait us out. And John Bolton will pass, and Mike Pompeo will pass, and Donald Trump will pass, Angela Merkel will pass. Putin's interested in building permanent arteries between Russia and Europe. Pipelines are like arteries. So, really important. So WDM, you're like, woo! Okay, so WDM says, I'm going through the periodic table with my 2-year-old. Well, one, I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend that. I tried that with my 2-year-old. It didn't work either. None of it stuck, by the way. When they're older, but good on you. Unless you have unless your 2-year-old is more exceptional than mine. Mine was. Sophie's awesome, but she's exceptional in many ways, but not when it comes to that. My wife says you compared some people once to the Lanthanide series. Refresh my memory, please. Like, refresh my fucking memory. I don't remember. Like, I can't, for the life of me, remember. I honestly can't. That's just one of those things that popped out of my head one night, randomly. And I wish I could. Because it sounds really cool, but I can't remember it. Where are we here? 49 minutes. All right. Russia would invade Belarus before allowing them into the EU. You bet your damn right they would. Yes, Putin will easily outlast Trump. Happy President's Day. Yeah, I'll say a prayer for Buchanan and Harding. The rest of them can go take a fucking long walk off a short pier. Coolidge is allowed to watch from the end of the pier. Everybody else is like fucking worthless. What else do we want to talk about, guys? Oh, okay, never mind. Stop. For those of you who are interested in geopolitics, that portion of the evening is over. I want you to have a serious discussion with Rocket Man, who just got himself a beautiful Nubian British Alpine Cross dairy goat. So we're going to talk about goats for a few minutes, and then I'm going to go home. Then I'm going to go because my back is killing me. All right. I'm really actually uncomfortable right now. It's been a bear of a couple of days. I tweaked my back a couple of days ago, and it has not improved. Couple of things. So, and I'll start with some general comments about owning dairy goats. One, goats in general, they're incredibly social creatures. They are herd animals, and they like being in a herd. And if they don't have a herd, they're profoundly unhappy. That's one. Nubians, especially if they're young, are incredibly emotionally dramatic and needy creatures. In particular, Nubian goats are. They talk a lot. They cry a lot. They really need to have companionship. A single goat is a lonely goat and an unhealthy goat who will not thrive. So it's incredibly important. You always get 2 at a minimum, preferably 3 or 4. Even if you just get a bunch of, neutered males or wethers to like hang out with the girl, then you have the herd and they're happy. Because the next phase of this is do not do the following. I've done it. Nubian is just a breed. What's a Nubian? No, I can't name that film. Damn it, but I know it. There's 2 things about dairy goats. Many things about dairy goats. So the first thing is this. You have to interrupt the maternity cycle. You have to become their kid. Awesome. That's the best news I've heard. So Rocket Man says, my mom's getting another 1 or 2 tomorrow up in Dewey. Great. Because you have to take the kids from her. And you have to substitute being her kid and bottle feed and then bottle raise the children. Okay? And then once the kids are weaned, then you can put them back out with the mom. And they'll know that that's their mom and that's the babies. They'll know that they're related because she'll wind up hanging out with her daughter. You always see it that moms and daughters hang out together. I've seen this in herds. Moms and daughters and granddaughters and whatnot. They all hang out together. So there's sub-cliques within the herd, especially when you have a big herd. At one point, I had a dairy goat, meat goat herd of about 30 goats. And you could really see the cliques that existed. But the kids can then be reintroduced back because the last thing you want is for the kids to then start nursing the milking mom. You want them weaned, and then they can go back out with the mom. Because if she's a good mom and has really good mommy instincts, then she'll allow them to nurse. So I did this with my first dairy goat. That first year, I didn't need this much milk because I had this big, beautiful year-old Nubian who was giving me like 3.5 quarts a day, for Christ's sake. Crazy the amount of milk this goat was giving me. And I didn't need it. So she had these 2 little boys. So I would milk her once in the morning, and then I would take the 1.5 quart or so off of her, and then I let the boys nurse. But that was terrible. For the rest of the summer, I couldn't keep them on a common fence line because even after they were weaned, if they were in one paddock and she was in another, she'd back her ass up to the fence and they'd stick their little heads through the fence and nurse through the fence at 8 months old. So, no. Bad. The other thing is that she doesn't learn the order. She doesn't learn the pecking order ultimately. And I'm struggling with this with the new one that I just got, which is that she's like 4 years old. She's raised 3 sets of kids on her own. And now she's not raising her kids and she's being milked and she doesn't like it at all. She's a good girl, but she's also really high strung, and not high strung, but she's really, you know, strident. What's the word? I'm like, there's a word my mother-in-law uses for this. I can't remember off the top of my head. It'll pop into my head in a minute. And, you know, I mean, she snorts at me. She doesn't respect me because I'm just a human. She doesn't like humans. She wasn't raised that way. And these animals will revert to type very quickly if they're not handled when they're kids, bottle fed when they're kids, and all of that stuff. So that you are basically the herd master. So you're in charge of the herd and they all defer to you. Because then you can work with them. And so it may take me 2 years to get her to calm down when she's just finally too old that she doesn't give a shit anymore and she's not willing to fight me. But right now she's fighting me on everything. And you don't want to go through that at all, because it just makes it miserable for everybody. She's not happy. You're not happy. She doesn't produce as much. Because it'll be easy for the first 6 or 7 weeks when she's flooded with oxytocin and she's all full of mommy hormones and she loves everything and she wants to be. But then once that falls off and she's just making milk every day, if you don't have a good relationship with the goat, you're in trouble. And I tell you this after 8 years of doing this shit, there's a reason why there's best practices for raising dairy goats. And everybody will be happier. Everybody. If you do it right. So, Kevin, oh God, that's from Chasing Amy? Holy shit, dude, I've only seen Chasing Amy like once or twice. So. Nah, I liked, sorry, dude. Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back was fucking hysterical. Sounds like she's hangry. Give her a Snickers. I feed her as much as I can possibly feed her at this point without making her sick to her stomach. You can only feed them so much grain and so much alfalfa. They've got to get long stem browse. You've got to, their dietary requirements are really important and really specific. So you don't want to overfeed them, but you don't want to underfeed them. And it's just hard. So a hungry goat is an easy goat to like manipulate emotionally, because once they know where the food is, they just run towards it. But if they get any opportunity to think about their situation and they don't like their situation, it's not ornery. It's trifling. That's it. Trifling. That's my hillbilly mother-in-law uses the word trifling. She's a trifling bitch, you know. It's hard. And I probably would. But yeah, I mean, but again, this is hard won, right? White suburban kid, played video games and football as a child. I had not one iota of how to do anything on a farm. Thank God I married a farm girl. I would have never had these ideas in my head in the first place. I would have never even thought about moving out into the country or anything like that. As a matter of fact, none of my life would look the way it does had I not married Camille. So learned a lot over the years. So really important. I you know, and this is I feel, you know, this is part of what we're doing here, is like impart wisdom, and wisdom comes hard won in my case, which is I've done everything fucking wrong imaginable in raising dairy goats. And I'm too stubborn to stop. So, you know, I just want to see you succeed with the minimal amount of effort. And that goes for everybody. Anybody who's actually interested in this lifestyle. It's not an easy thing, and I sincerely doubt many of you are. But if you do it right, it's really rewarding. And the last thing you want to do is work hard and get nowhere. So, all right. I think that's about it. Maduro says Russia's going to deliver 300 tons of humanitarian aid to Venezuela. Of course they are. Because in some ways, this is the Russians and the Chinese striking back and forcing the Americans to spread their focus. Venezuela is part of that is part of this thing with Venezuela is about spreading the Trump administration's focus in too many places at once. Mark Bogosian is going to end with words of wisdom for the evening for all of us. Ready? And marry the right woman and you become the man you were meant to be. I don't really have anything else to say about that other than, yeah, you're right. And I chose very, very well. All right. That's it. Tomorrow morning, noon, Ron Paul Institute. I'll be on there. I may do a video before I go to bed tonight. Then again, I may not. I'm tired of sitting in this chair today. All right, you guys take care. You have a great evening, and we will talk on Friday evening at 8:30. Take care. Keep your stick on the ice.